Okay, I think we're live now, so good morning everybody, and hello to all of you. Very good morning, very warm welcome from Salford to you all this morning. Welcome to the launch of our Tackling Inequalities, the Salford Way event. My name's Tom Stannard, I'm Chief Executive of the City Council here in Salford, and I'll be your chair for this special showcase event this morning. It's great to see so many people have joined our virtual event today from the length and breadth of the country to find out more about the great work that's happening here in Salford and our future plans for this great city. Salford, as many of you will know, is a city of great strength and of resilience and has a long and very proud history of cooperation and of pioneering progressive change. And over the next hour or so, you're going to hear more about the exciting work taking place as we shine a spotlight on our vision and our plans aimed at transforming the city's local economy over the coming years to help to create that more inclusive, fairer, greener and healthier city for all. And having joined the council earlier this year, I'm particularly pleased we've completed the review of our great 8 strategic priorities for the years ahead. And in this, we've got a very clear eye on recovery of the city of Salford and of Greater Manchester after the pandemic. And as you'll hear shortly, in particular, we're sharpening focus on inequalities and wealth building, honing our economic strategy and amplifying our climate commitments. And I'm especially pleased we're also going to be focusing on Salford as a learning city, given the importance of skills and lifelong learning for all our residents, and I'm delighted to be part of that movement here at the council. It has been an incredibly difficult 12 months for everyone across the world, and tomorrow is an important milestone for the country as we remember those we've lost from COVID with a National Day of Reflection, and I'm sure that many of you will join us at the City Council in marking that day tomorrow. And public health will naturally remain a core priority for the council and for our partners, and I'm delighted also we have our DPH with us on the panel today to take questions towards the end of the event. But as we remember that terrible toll the pandemic has had on families and communities across the nations, it's also time to look to the future as Salford begins its own journey to rebuild the local economy in a way that seeks to tackle those social, economic and health inequalities that have been so exposed by COVID-19. So today, Salford is ready to tell its own unique story of how we intend to recover from the pandemic. And we're going to shine a spotlight on a number of specific areas of work that are really going to help us to rebuild the city over the medium to long term. And to help us with that, we'll shortly hear from our City Mayor, Paul Dennett, who will talk about the city's strategic priorities and our new inclusive economy and tackling poverty strategies. We're also joined by a great friend of mine, Neil McInroy from the Centre for Local Economic Strategies, who's going to provide us with a national perspective on the growing community wealth building movement and its power to create more resilient, fairer and sustainable local economies, which forms a bedrock of our approach here in the city. I'll also be pleased to introduce Councillor Sharmina August, who's our Executive Support Member for Equalities, Communities and Social Impact at the City Council, alongside Sue Johnson from Crowdfunder UK, who I'm delighted to say is going to be helping us to launch Salford's new crowdfunding initiative as a really practical example of our new approach to increasing local citizen participation. And we will, as is the usual fashion, have a Q&A panel discussion where you'll have the opportunity to ask questions about anything you've heard today, featuring our speakers alongside Muna Abdelaziz, our Director of Public Health, and Alison Page, the CEO of Salford Community and Voluntary Sector Organisation, our local VCS infrastructure organisation here in the city. So if you've got questions for any of our speakers, and that includes me, about anything you hear over the next hour or so, please share them in the chat box in the Q&A panel, which we'll be monitoring as we go through the speakers this morning. And I'll do my best to pose as many of those as possible to the panel at the end to give as much coverage as we can. And if, like many of us, you're active on Twitter and you like to tweet about the event, please do spread that loud and clear as widely as you can and use our hashtag the Salford Way. You'll find that on Twitter, and please use that to share information this morning. So thanks for being here with us today. It's a very important milestone event for us this morning, and I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker, the City Mayor of Salford, Paul Dennett. Over to you, Paul.
City Mayor, you're muted at the moment.
Sorry, my my microphone was muted there. I was just saying it's great to see so many people on the call today, including many colleagues from the City Council, to hear about Salford's journey and our plans to create a fairer, greener and healthier city over the coming years. As you've already touched upon, the past 12 months have been unlike any other in recent memory. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a profound and lasting impact on everyone across the world. It is a public health, economic and social crisis that has required everyone, whether in the public, private, voluntary, community or social enterprise sectors, to come together to support our communities and businesses in a time of great need. I'm incredibly proud and humbled at the way we have responded in the city, and I know we will continue to do all we can as we plan for better days ahead. However, the pandemic poses challenges of an unprecedented scale to local economies across the United Kingdom, against a backdrop of a hollowed out local government following 10 years of austerity and local government cuts. And prior to that, a new public management drift towards what was often referred to as private sector efficiency. Consequently, COVID-19 has further exposed and exacerbated the deeply entrenched economic and health inequalities that continue to lie at the very heart of our economic system. We all know that COVID-19 hasn't been the great leveller that was talked about initially, disproportionately impacting poorer communities and our Black and Asian minority ethnic communities across the country. So what have we been up to in Salford for the last 4 to 5 years? Well, we've distilled my previous manifesto into what we commonly refer to as the Great Eight. And when I was first elected City Mayor of Salford in 2016, I set out a policy platform to create a better and fairer Salford based around 8 key priorities we call the Great Eight. This has set the framework over the last 5 years for what I would refer to as a fairly radical policy agenda in local government, which have come to term sensible socialism, or the Salford Way. The Preston model is well known, and just a few miles down the road, my friend and colleague Matt Brown, as leader of Preston City Council, has pursued an innovative local government agenda, revitalising the city's ailing local economy. However, Salford's own economic miracle is less well documented, though in my opinion no less significant. As a city built on mines, mills, factories and docks, we've suffered greatly from the deindustrialisation of the 1980s. But in recent years, Salford has been on a remarkable journey to emerge as a modern global city, attracting record public and private sector investment, which alongside Manchester has been central to driving economic growth in the wider Greater Manchester economy. For example, as a City Council, we've invested millions of pounds into our local economy and infrastructure over the past decade, the best known of which laid the foundations for what we know today to be Media City UK, now home to the country's second largest hub for digital media and creative enterprises outside of London. Around 250 businesses operate in and around Media City, employing around 7,000 people. And phase 2 of Media City expansion is already underway, promising to double the size of the current development and deliver thousands more employment opportunities. We welcome the BBC's recent announcement to obviously create more jobs here in the city of Salford, and also to North Shore jobs outside of the City of London. Over recent years, we've also invested around £127 million into green spaces and green infrastructure, providing many miles of cycle paths and walking routes, as well as renovating disused wasteland to create new parks and areas of stunning nature. These investments have paid dividends during the COVID-19 pandemic, as people have increasingly relied on our walkways and parks for exercise and fresh air. The opening of the Royal Horticultural Society's 5th garden here in the city of Salford will soon add to our growing list of green spaces in the city and marks out Salford as a go-to destination for lovers of horticulture, gardens and nature. But I've always believed that the success of RHS Bridgewater isn't simply the opening of the garden itself or the jobs it will create and the visitor economy it will inevitably establish, but also how the garden is seen as a catalyst for continued investment into green infrastructure across our city, whether that be into people's homes, gated alleyways, communities, parks, or through our public realm. Also, with the support and stewardship of the local council, we've been doing a lot of work in the arts and cultural sector space, which obviously has been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Recently, the City Council has announced a multi-million-pound project in collaboration with the renowned arts venue Islington Mill to expand and renovate the footprint of the mill's existing site under new management arrangements, which puts the welfare of tenants and artist residences at the heart of the building's ownership, supporting not only the consumption of art and creativity in the city, but the nurturing of its ecology, the artists, creatives and makers themselves. There is also a significant number of projects underway or planned that will continue to have a major long-term impact on the city, creating new employment, training opportunities and industries for the future. This includes our plans for the Crescent that will sit within the highly significant Salford Innovation Triangle, linking Salford Royal Hospital with the University of Salford and Media City UK, providing opportunities to further build on frontier sectors in digital and health innovation. In addition to this, and in the west of the city, is Port Salford on the banks of the Manchester Ship Canal, a tri-modal freight facility and distribution centre that could become the UK's first inland waterway port to be served by rail, road and the sea, contributing towards Greater Manchester's target to become carbon neutral by 2038. The results of all this work have been a local economy which defies all expectations, providing well above average rates of economic growth compared to other areas of the country, and rebuilding the city's industrial heritage for a clean energy and high-tech digital future. In the last 5 years, Salford has gained 22,000 new jobs, and despite COVID-19, we anticipate further growth of 40,000 new jobs by 2040. While it's clear that this investment and impressive growth has brought significant improvements to the city, it is equally clear that for many people, they are simply not seeing the full benefits. The facts remain that significant economic and health inequalities continues within the city of Salford, which has been so starkly exposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Even before COVID-19, Salford was the 18th most deprived local authority in England, with more than 30% of Salford's population living in an area classed as highly deprived and levels of child poverty higher than national averages. Frustratingly, some of the worst areas of deprivation in the city are located next to areas that have seen some of the highest levels of growth in recent years. And while life expectancy has been improving in the last few decades, the rate of improvement has started to slow down. There remains a gap of around 3 years for males and 2 years for females between Salford and the rest of England. Within Salford, residents living in the most affluent areas can expect to live 11.2 years longer for males and 7.2 years longer for females, compared with those in the more deprived parts of the city. This is why, to truly build a more inclusive and greener local economy, addresses many of these historic inequalities and climate emergency. Our approach to local economic development also needs to adapt and evolve. Now more than ever, Salford needs to take a leading and proactive role in shaping new types of participative local economy that is focused on improving overall health and well-being of our people, and an economy where wealth and opportunities are more evenly distributed across all communities, an economy that more effectively tackles the climate emergency by delivering the green jobs and industries of the future, and an economy that values the unique strengths of local small businesses and the city's vibrant community, voluntary and social enterprise sector, which plays such a vital role in supporting local people, and an economy that ensures local public services are strengthened, delivering gold standards in employment conditions and placing control directly into the hands of local people. So what is our inclusive economy strategy? So today I'm proud to be sharing with you our new inclusive economy and tackling poverty strategy. That sets out our bold ambitions for the future of our great city. The inclusive economy strategy, in particular, what we've aptly called closing the divide, marks the turning point in our approach to sustainable economic development in Salford and sets out a bold 5-point plan based upon, firstly, building local community wealth, which is a key tenet of the Preston model and something Neil will talk about. This will seek to really use the power of the Salford pound and our collective anchor institutions spend. And obviously working with local businesses and local supply chains, we will seek to make progress with regards to community wealth building. Secondly, we also have lofty ambitions to significantly grow our local social economy, which is squarely focused on examining who owns wealth in the city and promoting greater diversity of business ownership, from cooperatives to mutuals to employee ownership. Thirdly, we're stepping up our plans to create a transition to a zero carbon economy to meet our carbon reduction targets through delivering the new green jobs and industries of the future and investing in clean, renewable and transport improvements. Fourthly, as the pandemic has clearly shown, the value of high quality publicly run services has been vital in responding to the crisis. This is why we want to strengthen our core public services, including identifying opportunities for insourcing to provide good quality direct services to the public. Fifthly, and we also need to strengthen our local democracy, focusing on opening up opportunities for greater citizen participation in our economy and our public spaces and institutions. And you'll hear shortly about our new crowdfund Salford platform, which forms a key part of that approach. And then finally, in terms of our refreshed tackling poverty strategy, this work is, I'm proud to say, really important, and colleagues will know that we've already launched previously our No One Left Behind strategy, and what we've sought to do here is refresh that strategy, building on previous award-winning approaches such as the Salford Poverty Truth Commission, by continuing to put poverty prevention and reduction at the heart of everything we do as a partnership in Salford, addressing many of the underlying causes of poverty, whether that be low pay, or insecure work, debt, unemployment, poor and physical mental health, and inadequate social security system, or low educational attainment. All of this remains crucial if we're to reduce inequality and improve the overall health and well-being of our local population. But we also must focus on the basics, boosting the number of good quality jobs, improving pay and employment standards, improving skills, tackling debt and helping households to save, and providing genuinely affordable council and social housing. Of course, Salford is already doing many of these things. For example, we were the first council to pay the real living wage in Greater Manchester. A year ago, Salford became the first place in England to be recognised for its ambition to become a living wage city. Our plan is to double the number of people working for an accredited living wage employer from 10,000 to 20,000 over the next 3 years. We've reduced the number of people earning less than the real living wage from 16.5% to 14.5%, the best in Greater Manchester. We've boosted the pay for over 3,000 care workers in the city, taking them closer to the real living wage. We've improved the digital skills of up to 8,000 of our disadvantaged residents as part of our award-winning Digital Salford initiative. And last December, it was my privilege to announce the next stage of Salford's Council House building scheme, through which the council intends to build thousands more homes over the coming years. The announcement was the culmination of over 4 years worth of work with our council-owned company Derive, which we've established since my election in 2016. Ultimately, our vision is simple: a local economy based on interesting, fulfilling, well-paid and secure jobs in practical industries and professions. A local economy which small businesses, cooperatives and mutual community enterprises can thrive. With these strategies, we reinforce our commitment to ensuring everyone in Salford has the opportunity to participate, to get involved, and that together we can create a more equal and fairer Salford. But within it, I believe there is the real seeds of a functional and effective model of local government in its own right. Economically interventionist and socially conscious, delivering on the expectations of both the public while also facilitating a progressive economic agenda. Such a strong local government role is now all the more vital to help our economy and country recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.
Paul, thank you very much. That's a great introduction to the breadth and scope of those plans and strategies we have for the long term across the city. I'm going to pass straight over now to Neil McInroy. Neil is the Chief Executive of CLES, the Centre for Local Economic Strategies, very much at the heart of the development of not just the Preston model, but embedding community wealth building in many areas of the country. And as we've heard, that forms a bedrock of our approach here in Salford. So very warm welcome to Neil, and I will hand over to you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom, and delighted to be here. Delighted to be here in Salford, albeit virtually. I mean, I've been 20 years in Greater Manchester, and Salford, I've always had a soft spot for Salford. I think great people, great communities, great business, great place. And in my pandemic experience, it's my regular bike and walk route is out and around Salford, so delighted to be here. My organisation, CLES, Centre for Local Economic Strategies, in the vanguard of community wealth building in the UK. We're based here in Greater Manchester, CLES, but work across the piece. And of course, today Salford, and Paul's quite correct, you know, Salford's been on this journey for a long time. We've had a lot of great stuff going on in Preston, but I think there's equally, if not better, stuff here going on in Salford, and it hopefully joins the community of community wealth building places today and moving forward, alongside New York City, Cleveland, Glasgow, and a host of other areas that are all exploring this way of doing economic development. Also, it's worth noting that the Scottish Government is now, in their programme for government, is taking forward community wealth building. So illustrious partners, I suppose, in this endeavour. It's worth just thinking a little bit about the pandemic, if I may, in that I think in some quarters, though not in Salford, I think there's a sense that there's a linear nature to this crisis, that we're in crisis and then we're out of crisis. I think that would be folly. Given the climate emergency, given ongoing inequalities, given ongoing problems we have post-pandemic, if you like, in terms of the repercussions, I think this is not a linear crisis, it's more of a roller coaster. And in a sense, what we need to think about, and what Salford is thinking about, is the bigger transitions, the bigger shifts that we need to make in our society, our public services and our economy. And I think that's what is being launched today. It's bold, it's ambitious, it's kind of making the big transition. It's not just saying let's build back to the way it was, it's saying truly let's build back in a progressive and imaginative way. So fair wind in its sails. And thinking about community wealth building, it's about the economy, of course, but what happens when we think about the economy? I mean, some of you listen to this will think, oh, economy, that's about jobs and income. Well, it is about jobs and income, but it's also about wealth. Wealth. Wealth is the defining feature of all economies. Who has it? Where does it go? And how do more people and communities get it? So this here today is also not about jobs and income, which is important. It's also about wealth. And then we also think about the economy or economic development. We think about growth, don't we? But it's not just about growth. This is about greening the economy. This is about fairness. This is about well-being. This is about an economy that creates health. This is not just about growth. And then when we think about the economy, we also think about inward investment, don't we? What comes to us, what comes into our place. That's fine, we do need that, of course, and Tom and Paul talked about this, but it's also about what we can build from within, from our creativity, from our imagination, from our ingenuity of our people, our communities and our businesses, build from what we've got, not just what we can import in. And then finally, when we think about the economy, we think about as workers, as us sort of passive within the economy. No, it's also about us being active players, as owners of the economy in some way, to having a genuine stake in the economy in some way. Economic democracy, if you have it. So that's why the participation, the democracy side of things is so important. And in these times, rest assured folks, in these times, the best local authorities, the best places consider what the economy is and who it works for. It says, let's shape the economy that works for us. And this is what this inclusive economy approach is doing. It's thinking and doing wealth, justice, well-being. It's thinking about decarbonisation. It's thinking about economy built for us, for the people, for the communities, for our business. In short, it's thinking and seeking to build community wealth and an inclusive economy. Now, at the core of community wealth building is an idea that we don't all wait for the economy to grow and then we just redistribute the awards. This is actually much more activist, and Paul, I suppose, as the mayor, demonstrates that activism. It's about a Salford Way as an inclusive economy is not passive, it is activist. It says, why don't we give people more say in the economy in the first place? So it's encouraging Salford businesses, SMEs, co-ops. It's about seeking to grow employee-owned companies and other inclusive business models. It's seeking to say, hold on here, Salfordians, how can we get you to get a direct, enduring role within the economy? Not in a passive way, but in an active way. Not just as workers, but as owners and people that gain the dividends from the wealth and economic activity that occurs. Now, none of this is easy, of course. You know, this is, oh, we have a strategy, oh, well, brilliant, pop it, here it goes, fantastic. These are tough times. And no matter how we would wish, we can't change everything at once. The plans we've got here are committed to bespoke local action across a range of areas, making sure that the Salford pound works for all, that we grow business citizenship, that we create decent employment, that we create good health, we recirculate wealth. The approach we've got here is nimble, it's stealthy, it's aiming to work with the real situations we've got and building from what's there to deliver improvement. And all that smaller stuff, all those little actions, I like to see as foreshadow bigger transitional shifts, bigger changes. There's a Scottish phrase that we use that I really love that says, Monia mickle max a muckle. Bit of a mouthful that, Monia mickle max a muckle. It means many small things add up to something bigger. The mickle, the doing of small things, amplified up, connected to create something at scale to make the big transition. Salfordians, you're all making money a mickle to make that big thing. And we've all got a role to play in that. Every individual, every community, every business, every public servant, you're part of that mickle to make the muckle. So I'm going on with that metaphor, I'll shut up. Finally, a word about partnership and anchors. Community wealth building across the UK and beyond, at its core lie those bigger anchor organisations, these large place-based organisations, the BBC, the local authority, Salford Reds, large companies, the hospitals, universities, the colleges. These health organisations particularly Health organisations are not just, all those organisations are not just what their core purpose is. Universities are not just about educating people. Health organisations are not just about making people better when they're ill. They're also economic agents. They buy stuff. They own land and property. They employ people. They are also economic agents. And that role they have in a place is fundamentally important. It could be worth 35, 40% of the whole Salford economy coming from those large public sector agencies. Significant. We need to get them working individually in their collective power as employers, as land and property holders, and as purchasers of goods and services. I'll finish off. I go to many places across the country. I see a real willingness here in Salford. I see a smartness. I see a solidarity. I see a collaboration. I see good people who want to do good by and for their place. So I say, fair wind in your sails, Salford, and let's do it the Salford way. Thank you very much.
Neil, thanks. That's a fantastic introduction. I'm not going to attempt to repeat your metaphor by any means, but I think wonderful though it is to see secondary cities like New York City following in the footsteps of Salford City Council on all of this. I think what's at the heart of this for all of us, as you've said, as Paul said, really is making it local, making it real, making it local, closing the divide and promoting that more even distribution of wealth across the economy. There's a lot more to this than just local procurement, which I think is a lot of people's perceptions of that, and that's, I think, something we'll get into in the Q&A. And incidentally, lots of great questions already coming in the Q&A, so please keep them coming. We'll try and get to as many of them as we can in just a minute. But firstly, we're going to just show you a quick case study video of community wealth building in action, just to try and amplify some of the comments that Neil's made. Technical wizards behind the scenes will help me out with that, and then we will come back to Sharmia and Sue. Thanks.
So my name's Lee Morgan. I'm the Managing Director of Thematic Technical FM. Thematic is a HVAC commercial service and maintenance company. We've been going since 1971. We've grown quite well in the last 5 years, nearly 50% growth year on year. We want to become recognised with Salford and Manchester to ensure that as we grow, people see us, see our vans and our brand, and hopefully think, well, that's a company that I want to work for, that I associate with my hometown.
Yeah, I'm Chris Smallwood and I'm Managing Director of Anchor Removals Limited, part of the Britannia Moving Cooperative. We moved to Salford in 2009 and we currently employ 10 staff. Anchor Removals provides removal services for furniture and household effects, anything from local to national removals. We also do international moving, so we move people to Europe, New Zealand, Australia. We also work with the NHS in supporting them on moves that allow them to be equipped for things like COVID, for example. Every company's responsibility to support its local community. I think that's the most important thing in the world. Yeah, the concept of an inclusive economy and building community wealth is massively important for us. If you think about it, all our staff, their families, they all live in the Salford area and that wealth would be shared with them. That's the whole benefit of the inclusive economy.
Community wealth building is important to Thematic as we grow forward to ensure that we keep those relationships with all our existing partnerships with the foundation, with the council. We want to be able to be involved as much as we can in the social responsibility within the community to ensure, again, we inspire people to want to come and work for Thematic.
When I sort of started here, they said, you know, we're a family here and it's important that we all feel that way and support each other, you know, and because we use local, we should support local and to make sure that grows along with us.
We work with local charities as well, so Victory Outreach down in Ordsall, in one of the most deprived areas of Salford, get support from us. We work with them. They have a food bank. We have offered to put out food supplies for them. We also, during the pandemic, provided food supply deliveries to local community through the Salford Voluntary Service Scheme.
The more money we make, the more money the economy makes, and you know, local growth for everyone.
At Thematic, we've heavily invested in our academy, whether it's because of the apprenticeships that we're actually bringing into the business and we're training and developing our own engineers of the future, or if we're even going out into the community and bringing in schools, bringing in colleges. especially bringing women and girls into the industry. I mean, that's something that's kind of been missed out a little bit in the past.
So living wage is important to us as well, because we want to attract and retain good talent. We're ahead of the game. We're offering what is a fair living wage.
Well, the living wage, just to clarify, is a £9.50 an hour payment that's paid to all our staff. It's very important to me. It means an awful lot to us. What it does is it allows families to operate normally, being able to pay the bills, not have to live hand to mouth.
The local procurement strategy for us is to ensure that sustainability is there as well.
I'm hoping to create a procurement sustainability policy, which I'm creating at the moment and developing that with a lot of commitments that aren't just sort of wishy-washy ticking boxes. They're going to be real commitments that we're going to stick to.
Well, sustainability is the key thing these days, isn't it? You know, looking after the environment and the planet is absolutely crucial. Ultimately, you know, being local, being part of Salford and dealing with Salford people means that keeps vehicle usage on the roads down, it helps the environment, it stops noxious fumes getting into the air and damaging our kids' health. The benefits, the financial benefits of that speak for themselves, really.
We're procuring smart, we're also procuring smarter for the environment as well.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Matt, for sharing that video for people to see. And I think it is almost literally that simple, but you can see some of those benefits in relation to the climate emergency and a whole range of other inequalities issues as part of what is that fundamental local wealth building approach that Neil spoke about. So hope that was helpful for people to see. I'm going to move swiftly on to Councillor Sharmina August now, who is going to talk to us about the launch of our new crowdfunding platform to support the strategies this morning. Great to see you, Sharmina. I'll pass over to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom, and hello, everybody. As Tom said, I'm Sharmina August. I'm the Executive Support Member for Equalities, Communities and Social Impact here in Salford. It is a very long title, I know. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for attending the launch of the Salford Way. I'm sure you will agree that what has been outlined today so far is a bold plan for Salford's future economic transformation. It's a really exciting time to be in this amazing city, and I'm extremely proud to be a councillor here. Despite the coronavirus pandemic, we have been pressing on with plans and working hard behind the scenes to deliver on some of these key commitments. And I'm here today to briefly talk about the launch of our exciting new Salford crowdfund platform, an online space where people can reach out to others in the community to get the funds they need to support their great projects. People in the city know Salford better than anybody else. They live and breathe the city, and we have seen during the pandemic what amazing things can be achieved by local people. Volunteers have come together to support each other and get vital supplies such as food and prescriptions to the most vulnerable in our society. The true spirit of Salford has been in action. Action when we need it most. These people know what matters and what changes can be made to their area and community to make the city a better place to live. So we want to continue to harness this energy and spirit by putting citizens at the forefront of creating new ideas and helping them to turn those ideas into a reality. So the council has teamed up with the amazing Crowdfunder UK to launch Crowdfund Salford. Using the power of the crowd, we'll be helping projects to find the funding and support they need to turn their ideas into a reality. And it works like this. People who have an idea to change their environment, to tackle poverty or to help other people can now take it further. So people draw up a basic plan and how much money they think it will take to run the plan for a year. They submit all the details to the Crowdfunder website to see what other people think of the idea. If the project gets 25% of the funding from the community, showing that other people in the city think that this is a good idea and are interested and can demonstrate how it will have a positive benefit for the people of Salford, then we'll review the idea and see if we can match the funding on offer to the original target up to a maximum of £10,000. This is 50% of the scheme. It is as simple as that. an innovative way for people making their dreams and ideas for the city to become a reality, and in turn making the city a better place to live. It's as Neil said earlier, and this might not be the right way to pronounce it, money a mickle, max a muckle. I know that this model works. In my own ward of Eccles, I've been incredibly impressed by Eccles RFC's crowdfunder, currently still going. They've exceeded their initial target of £20,000 and got their match funding from Sport England, thanks to the support of over 300 people in the community. I'm also really excited to tell you that we are already in conversations with 6 great local community groups about potentially funding their innovative projects. So, to tell us more and show how it will all work in practice, I'm delighted to introduce our partner for this project, the fantastic Sue Johnston from Crowdfunder UK. Thanks. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you very much. That was, I think, probably the most succinct and just a great introduction to what we do and the reason for Crowdfund Salford. Thank you so much for that introduction. We were also really excited by that by the rugby club at Eccles. So I'm Sue Johnston. I'm partnerships manager here at Crowdfunder, which means that I look after our local authority partners, and we're just delighted to partner with Salford City Council, with Mayor Dennett, and of course with the people of Salford. And as you've already heard, having new ideas in Salford is not new. The people of Salford have been coming up with new ideas for centuries. Funding them in this market can be quite challenging, but let me encourage you that we're seeing plenty of good ideas funded on the Crowdfunder platform. The community cares, doesn't it, about what goes on locally. Sometimes that is about giving money, and believe it or not, some people at home who are working, not spending what they were spending before, can afford to contribute more towards your good ideas. But even people that can't can contribute. They can volunteer, they can get involved, they can help spread the word. And crowdfunding has actually had a bit of a marketing blitz, if you like, thanks to Captain Tom. Everybody's heard about crowdfunding now. But actually how it works is really important. You have a good idea, you put it up on the platform. It's our job to help you through that process. It's not our job to have the good idea. So what you'll find on the platform is a really simple way to get your idea out there. We'll take you through the process of why does it matter? Who do you know? How can you get the word out there? What should you say? How can you use pictures? How can you use videos? We'll do all of that, and we'll help you with some workshops along the way, and we'll be working really closely with the CVS and with the council and with the other partners in Salford over this period of time. If your idea fits with one of those great 8 principles, we'll help you to apply for that match funding, and we'll work with the council to match fund wherever we can. And as you've already heard mentioned, we've got other match funders too. Sport England have a large fund with us, so if your idea is active, then we'll help you with that, and there are others. Crowdfunder is the largest rewards-based platform in the country. That means that you're not just putting your hand out and asking for money, you're giving something in return. And we know that works. We'll take you through that process. It's absolutely about an inclusive economy, letting everybody get involved, even if they can't necessarily contribute the money. We're used to really big ideas. We've worked with Rashford, delighted to say that. We're working with UNICEF at the moment to get jabs right out across the world. But we've also worked locally with organisations like Spectrum Connection, who want to raise £240 to help a family learn how to communicate with and better understand autistic children. In other words, it doesn't matter whether your idea is small and effective or absolutely massive. Crowdfunding is just one way. We feel that we fit really well with the Salford Way. It's just one way of getting your idea out there, getting some funding. And this partnership with Crowdfunder is Salford City Council's way of making sure that you've got the support that you need to make it work, to understand how to harness it and to make it work. To that end, we've already got a couple of workshops announced. So this Wednesday we'll be working on a Train the Trainer workshop. So if you're working with groups in Salford, we'll take you right through the process, how you coach somebody else to crowdfund. And then on the 21st of April, we've got a workshop planned to work with projects showing you how to crowdfund. So lots of help. All you have to do is Google Crowdfund Salford and you'll find us and you'll find the platform. And we're really looking forward to working with you.
So thank you, and many thanks as well to Sharmina, who managed to get Neil's metaphor across effortlessly, which was probably one of the most impressive things I've heard this morning. So fantastic, but we're delighted to be part of that whole movement really around the crowdfunding platform, and I think there's a fantastic level of potential in that. I'm going to move straight into the Q&A now, and I will be cherry picking various people to come in on various questions, so keep them coming in, but believe me, there's plenty there for me to be getting on with already. So if I can just very quickly pick up with you at the end of what you've just said, there is a question at the end about how much funding in total is available for this, and I guess the answer to that is partly in the quality and strength and support for the proposals that come forward, really, isn't it?
That's right. So actually Councillor August expressed it really well, didn't she? There's up to £10,000 for individual projects, but the important part of crowdfunding is demonstrating that there is local support for your idea. So you have to get to 25%, and then we'll take you through the application process. If you're only looking to raise £2,000, then your match will be up to £1,000. If you're looking to raise up to 20,000, then your match could be up to 10,000. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yep. No, that's helpful. And I think that's the kind of level of interest that we want to generate, is really that kind of participative approach to funding to get some of these schemes off the ground, isn't it? So that's brilliant. OK, we're going to move into some other questions, and I'm pleased we're joined on the panel by Alison Page from the CVS here in Salford, and also by Muna Abdelaziz, who is our Director of Public Health at the City Council. So if I can, I'm going to pick on the two of them to go first with a question that's been posted by some of you have used your names, some of you have been anonymous, but this is a question from Rachel. And Rachel's asking, how can we best involve residents of Salford, particularly those most affected by poverty, in the strategies, and how can we really promote that community and community engagement in taking all of this work forward? So I'll perhaps come to Alison first and then to Muna on that.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. I think what's really important is to recognise the strength of communities in Salford. We know there are loads of challenges in Salford, as Paul articulated before, but what we do have is a huge number of community groups in Salford, alongside charities, voluntary organisations and social enterprises. 70% of our sector. So over 1,000 small community groups in Salford across the length and breadth of the city, in terms of being hyper-local, in terms of addressing issues of identity, of interest and experience. And those people are highly engaged within communities. And what I think is really important, that we make sure we're using those people as a route into engaging wider communities, to make sure that people do know about what's going on around the Salford Way, do know about the new crowdfund opportunity, and can feel that they can get engaged. Certainly at Salford CVS, as a local infrastructure organisation for that sector, we will be working really hard with partners to make sure that's a reality. And also, I think, recognising that we have a Salford Social Value Alliance in Salford and a 10% Better campaign to try and improve the lives of the people in Salford. So I think involving as many people as possible around making commitments to making sure that local people are engaged is really, really important. As the City Mayor said, democracy is central to this initiative. And as Neil has pointed out, you know, in order to have community wealth building, a lot of these initiatives have got to be led by local people. I think we've got the ingredients in this city. We've got a neighbourhood model that really enables us to engage more. We know that there's a lot more to do, but I do think we have the right partnerships in place. And certainly within my sector, I think we've got some really passionate, larger organisations that really want to play a key role in driving this forward.
Great, Alison, thanks for that, and couldn't agree more with those sentiments. Mona, do you want to comment on the back of that?
Yes, absolutely, and I think I'll just sort of comment on something that Neil said about people being active owners rather than recipients. So people who live in Salford, or even who live and work in Salford, really do own the Salford Way. And it's about how we use our local services. It's about how we have the great ideas for crowdfunding. It's also thinking about how we responded to COVID-19 as a pandemic. We've responded as people, haven't we? And it's people who are sort of really engaged in work and health. So when you look at the inclusive economy, it is about how jobs bring health, but also how health has affected our workplaces. And so it's just really making sure that whoever we are, wherever we are, whatever we do, and we live in Salford, that we are maximising our connections into our local neighbourhoods as neighbours, but also into the places where we work and also the places where we visit. So we all have a role to play, really. And I think that this is a really marvellous way in which the inclusive economy has really merged with our locality plan and our health and well-being plan for the city as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mona. That's really good insight there. And I think there's a big issue there about how we encourage ownership and how we encourage a whole range of different partners, health, public, private, voluntary sector, to participate in this. There's a great question, which is an anonymous question, which came in, which I'm just going to perhaps put to Neil and then to Paul, if I can, which is, Salford has seen fantastic private sector investment in recent years, and how are we going to bring the private sector into this partnership and the commitment to building a more inclusive economy? So one of those key partners that's playing a massive role in the growth of Salford and Greater Manchester, but how are we really going to keep the private sector in as part of that? Neil, do you want to try out on that for us first?
Well, I think Salford's been very successful so far in bringing the private sector into the conversation. I think the challenge here is that when private sector comes, that there's a sense that they're coming to Salford, and that comes with certain things that they'll get in return, if you like, in terms of support, but also an understanding that they have to bring things with them as well, in terms of what they offer, in terms of workforce, in terms of supply chains, in terms of playing a role within the wider community of Salford, and its broadest sense community, business community, public sector community, and local community. So I think the private sector is an attractive place for the private sector. I think the great place of the world, and I'm putting Salford in that, they allow that business to snuggle and fit within the milieu and the culture and the context and the desire and wants and needs of what Salford needs and what Salford citizens needs. That's the enlightened way approach. That's the Salford way. You don't, other places in the world, the private sector comes and are allowed to do whatever they want, you know, in the sense it's kind of free for all. The best businesses, the good business, the business of the future, the 21st century, wants to come, snuggle, make a contribution, and create a catalytic effect in economic growth, economic success, but also wider social and ecological success too.
Paul, private sector, great partner of ours in the city. Are you up for snuggling with them?
Thanks, Tom. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the city of Salford today, you know, we already have fairly entrenched relationships with the private sector. You know, think of Greengate, think of New Bailey, think of what's happening in Middlewood Locks, and also, you know, what's happening in Media City, and obviously Media City Phase 2. So, you know, I would argue that the private sector is already in many respects embedded in the city of Salford in terms of, you know, access to often foreign direct investment or global finance. I think the challenge really for me is more about how do we leverage that investment for the benefit of the people of the city ultimately. So, you know, I'm much more interested in that sort of that collaborative space where we can leverage investment to create opportunities for people in the city of Salford, whether that be employment opportunities, apprenticeships, job startups, whether that be, you know, business startups, innovation, all of that sort of stuff is really what I'm interested in the city of Salford. I guess what I'm not interested in is a kind of private sector, you know, extractive model at any cost, where, you know, investors just come to the city of Salford, they speculate in the short term, and they walk away with their return on investment and probably transfer debt on to other people. You know, that's not what I'm interested in here. What I'm interested in is people who genuinely share our values and beliefs coming to the city of Salford. I know when we pitched for investment into the Crescent Master Plan, you know, we were very clear in terms of our message there. It was sold, not for sale. And, you know, if you're going to come to the city of Salford, then, you know, be prepared to work with us. Be prepared to work with us on a progressive agenda. Be prepared to work with our community voluntary social enterprise sector. Be prepared to tackle some of the ills of the labour market. And what I'm getting at there is, you know, low pay, not non-living wage, part-time employment when people want full-time hours. You know, I could go on. This is the place where people will come to do progressive things, driven by, I would like to think, you know, values, beliefs, a sense of morality and purpose. But also this is a place to come if you're genuinely interested in meaningful collaboration, because, you know, we talk about the spirit of Salford and that the welfare of the people is the highest law. And, you know, I'm so privileged to work as part of such a fantastic team in the city of Salford who hold my feet to the fire, keep me real. And, you know, in terms of any investors coming into this city, it's just making the point really that they're coming into a community, a fairly well established community, and, you know, it's that community that they'll be playing ball with. So yeah, right. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Paul. And I think some immense opportunities with very willing parts of the private sector there to work with us. We've talked about the parts of our innovation triangle in the Crescent, in Media City, at the hospital, but I think beyond that into our towns and communities and the wards that members like Sharmina and others represent, you know, it's about that, you know, embedding that growth across the whole of the city as well as in the high growth end of the city, I think is going to be fundamental to us. There's another great question here, which I can't resist asking to a couple of the most cheerful people that I know on the call, which is Muna and also Sharmina. So this is for the two of you, and that is, it's anonymous, I'm afraid, but how do you propose to raise people's morale and get people involved in the Salford Way? And I think that issue about morale, about people feeling, you know, really downbeat after a year or more of restrictions, you know, how do we turn this into more than just a financial movement, but an upbeat movement that's actually about well-being and all those wider issues? So morale, Sharmina, did you want to start with that?
Yeah, I think it's showing the opportunity and the hope that's out there, and that's what I think particularly something like the crowdfunding can do, is that you have ideas and that these can be made a reality very, very quickly, to be honest. You go out there, you get some support from the Crowdfund Salford platform like Sue was talking about, and you talk to your community and you make real difference really quickly, and the council support you with that, with the match funding. I think part of what the pandemic has showed us is that even in periods of real desperation and real hopelessness that some people felt, people came together, and that was the spirit of Salford. People came together and said, no, I'm going to do something. You know, there were people who were made redundant or on furlough, were let go, had real issues, but I saw so many people pour their energy into helping others, and it gave them purpose, it gave them hope, and that's, to me, what raised the morale. And I think all these strategies that we're putting forward now help to do that.
Great, thanks, Sharmina. And Muna, I never tire of seeing Muna on a video screen on a Monday morning because she's always smiling. So do you want to talk about morale as well, Muna?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that it's about looking at the assets rather than the deficits. And I think today captures it quite well by looking at growth, looking at wealth, looking at health, but not really, you know, using the language of previous years where we look at deprivation, disadvantage. Even health inequalities has a positive aspect to it that we can really grasp, because people really do feel passionate about some of these inequalities. Some of the things that City Mayor talked about earlier about the sort of life expectancy or life chances that some of our communities in Salford aren't really experiencing the best of what they can. And so we really have to look at the assets around that. We've seen within the COVID pandemic, people felt really strong and passionate about Black Lives Matter, about the inequalities that our Black and Asian minority ethnic groups are experiencing, but also people feel really, really passionate about poverty, and it's about how we can improve our social capital, our connectedness, our financial inclusion, how we are working with our credit unions. And so there's quite a lot of, that we can build on, huge opportunities, but also assets that do exist right now in Salford. And we haven't heard enough about those positives. That's why we keep smiling, because the best way of joining them up is, and I'm not going to say it properly, but it's meckles and muckles. But actually, you know what? It's the little things that add up to great. So every small change you make can have a huge impact. So make that change for the better. Thank you.
Great, Muna, and some real positives in that. And I think the real energy in the city to help us to mobilise with some of those movements to get some real positive energy around this programme, which is great. I said at the start as well that I was really pleased. Well, one of the many things I'm pleased about in the Great 8 priorities is the amplification of our commitment to the climate emergency and to net zero. It's a crucial agenda for all of us globally, regionally, locally. Steve North, who's asked numerous questions actually this morning, but I'm going to pick on one of his that I particularly like and point this to Alison and to Neil, if I can, which is how do we really ensure the provision of green jobs and providing sustainable employment to help us to tackle the climate emergency as part of the partnership that sits behind this. Alison, can I come to you first on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because in order to create green jobs, we need businesses and there needs to be a market. But sometimes I think what we've got to do is try and disrupt the market, isn't it? And say that this place, so as part of the Salford Way, this place welcomes people who want to come along with business ideas to create green jobs, to create a greener economy. And I think we need to make sure that we don't just think that's about digital, that it's also about, because certainly in my life experience of working in the field of I suppose the environment for many years, is that we have to recognise that we need jobs for all abilities at all stages of life. So we need to make sure that there are lots of jobs. But I think that, we have got the real opportunity around recycling, around reuse, around retrofit, around green energy. We have got everything. We have got a massive amount of green and blue space in Salford. So some huge opportunities, I think. But I think the other side of that is really looking at spend, isn't it? It's supply chain. It's about messaging around consumption and providing alternatives. So I think there's some real opportunities. For instance, around social enterprise, one of the ambitions around community wealth building is to make sure that more decision making is in local people's hands, but also that we really encourage local people with ideas to set up businesses. I think the crowdfunder gives an opportunity. I think there are other opportunities in the city, and I think we really need to prioritise the creation of green but also well-paid jobs. I know Steve's passionate about the living wages, and he knows I am. But I think in terms of our Social Value Alliance, and I'm the chair of the Salford Social Value Alliance, and our motto is for people, for planet and for prosperity. And what we've got to do is align those things to make sure that that is a real opportunity in Salford. So I don't think it's an easy task. And I think one of the things we've got to make sure is that those who are I suppose at the front of business development and regeneration within the city are really thinking about the creation of green and sustainable jobs. And I think, as Neil said, when we invite people into Salford, we need to put some conditions on. We need to say it's an offer and an ask. It's a fantastic place to come and do business, but we need to make sure it's the right businesses that are coming to Salford.
Neil.
Well, it's a tough one because we've got a long way to go in England. I think we've got a paradigm shift to make to move to a green economy and to create the huge green jobs dividend that is so required from that. So it's a quantum leap, and I think it's not just for Salford really. This is one for the wider Greater Manchester and the nation as well. I would say that I think that Salford is one of the more progressive boroughs, be controversial, within Greater Manchester. I think you can lead the way. You can be the Salford way, but maybe lead the GM way in terms of agitating for what I think is required as a Green New Deal, and a local Green New Deal, and a city region Green New Deal, where we see a huge amount of investment brought into the city region for massive green jobs, particularly around the necessary ones like housing refit and rewilding, a whole a whole green army, if you like, is required in terms of a transition in the economy. So I think you can, all the stuff that Alison mentioned, I think is fine, great. You know, you have to get on with that. Those things you can do at a local level, social, you've got to try and turn the dial. But we have to be, there's a political battle here. There's a amplification battle. Salford needs to do as much as it possibly can on its own, but say we could do a lot more if. Then that needs to be placed firmly within the Greater Manchester City Region agenda, and then that needs to be part of a wider devolution plea, I think, for a Green New Deal and a jobs revolution. But it's hard because I would say in England the soil conditions are not all that fertile for the growth of a huge green jobs revolution, which arguably is what the planet requires.
Thanks, Neil. And I think in a shameless, gratuitous plug, actually, this is an area that, as well as wealth building, there is a lot of support and a lot of good innovation coming out of CLES, and really pointing authorities and cities across the country to how we're actually able to promote that green revolution in employment and in wealth distribution. I think that is going to be almost a zeitgeist issue for the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left, folks, and we've still got 470 questions to get through, so that doesn't lend itself to brevity. But I've got one in particular that I want to come to Paul with, because I think it is a massively important issue, as he and I know, for the city, and I know one that's close to his heart. And this was one that came from Glynis in the Q&A chat, who actually works here at the City Council. And Glynis, Paul, is asking, she doesn't feel she's hearing enough about housing, and that being such an important issue for families across the city, massive impact on health and well-being. So more we can say about housing, timescales for new houses to be built, different types in 10 years, and how that is part and parcel of this strategy. Paul.
Yeah, no, really good question, Glynis. And I guess we could dedicate a whole session to talking about the housing and homelessness crisis, to be quite honest with you. But just to reassure Glynis, really, housing is very much a central plank of what we've been up to over the last 4 to 5 years. People may know we've created our own development company, which sits outside of something called the Housing Revenue Account. And what we're doing is using commuted sums and land holdings in the City Council and unsupported borrowing, exploiting, if you like, the Public Works Loans Board low interest rates to basically build truly affordable housing. And you know, why are we doing that? Well, we call it council housing, actually. Why are we doing it? We're doing it because at the moment, the market has fundamentally failed us. What's coming through the planning system quite often is not affordable when you contrast that with what people are earning. So this is a great example of where local councils have needed to be interventionist to tackle the housing and homelessness crisis. But we have to go so much further. You know, we've committed over, you know, the next few years really to building thousands of council houses in the city of Salford, something I'm deeply, deeply proud of. But we've got a national government that fundamentally believes in the market on this agenda, or housing associations to build affordable housing. Affordable housing for government is often seen as 80% of market value. That is not affordable for many people here in the city of Salford. So what we need to get back to is what happened after World War II, where councils up and down the country were genuinely empowered with the resources to actually build council housing en masse. And what was interesting about that period of time is that homelessness in this country was rendered statistically insignificant. So history teaches us the solutions, in my opinion here. It's only when councils are given the money and given the powers to build council housing that we can actually make progress on tackling the housing and homelessness crisis. And, you know, for me, we need to go further. We probably need to scrap right to buy. I know some people talk about pausing it, but in Greater Manchester, we've seen over 95,000 homes purchased under right to buy since 1980. Many of those homes have never been replaced, and many of those homes have found their way into the private rented sector, where we know rents have shot up and standards have often gone down, and that is hugely problematic. So for me, you know, I'll be political on this. Government really do need to get a grip. Let's stop tinkering around the edges and let's genuinely empower councils to start building the council housing of the future. And the council housing of the future for me is net zero carbon homes. We've talked earlier about the green industrial revolution. This would be a fantastic job to create employment opportunities, apprenticeship opportunities in a post-COVID-19 world to tackle the economic crisis that's about to hit this country. So, you know, I'm totally on board with this, but we need a government nationally committed to making this happen. And at the moment, unfortunately, we do not have that. So we have to be pragmatic and do what we can locally with the resources we've got, which is very much the space Salford are in. Sorry to go on, Tom, but I thought it was an important question.
No, that's fine, Paul. Thanks. We've got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to move us on deliberately to a question that's about job creation and opportunities. And this is from Deanne. And Deanne is mother to Amber, who is a member of our fantastic, bright, sparkling member of our youth council, who I had the privilege of meeting and being Q&A'd myself with just a couple of weeks ago. Amber's a brilliant ambassador for young people with learning disabilities here in the city of Salford. And Deanne is asking, how do we incentivise companies to offer more job opportunities for young people with learning disabilities? I'm perhaps just going to pick on Sharmina to give that a go for us, and then I'll throw it open and see if any other panelists want to comment as well.
Thanks, Tom. People probably don't know that I used to work with people with different sorts of abilities and how to get them into employment and things. And one of the greatest issues people felt that they faced was stigma. You know, most people can do different jobs and things like that, and adaptations can be made to make things really accessible to people. For most people, it was the stigma that held them back. And I think what really needs to be done is a campaign to erase that stigma. I mean, it's awful, and it can be internalized as well. And I think what we need is more people like Amber who are flying the flag and making waves to make sure that these sorts of things go away, because there aren't many things out there that people can't do if they put their mind to it. And the law is there in a way, although not strong enough in my opinion, to make sure that people aren't discriminated against, but the reality just isn't there. So we have lots of schemes such as the Working Well scheme and the Living Well scheme in Salford to help support people, but I do think that what's actually needed is a more powerful steer from national government in terms of what the law actually says. And I think that we need to work much harder to raise that stigma, because in terms of what people can do and want to do, that's not the issue. The issue is making sure that people are able to access these things properly, in my opinion.
Great, Sharmina, thanks. And I think that's crucially important with all our talk of the learning city, of progression, of supporting people in work as well as people coming to work for the first time. It's very, very important that we, take a very proactive attitude, but I think still try and push the boundaries of that national agenda around support for young people with learning disabilities, and hopefully, well, I'm completely confident that Amber and Deanne will be part of our movement in that respect, having spoken to them already. Great. I'm going to, given the time, folks, I'm going to ask one more question, which I'm picking from the chat, which I think all of you will want to say at least, or sorry, I should say at most 30 seconds on, if you can. And that is from, I'm certain this is not a bag of crisps or peanuts, but somebody's put themselves down as KP. Excellent input, KP says. How do you strike a balance between being hyper-local, very much part of the crowdfunder approach, and also being part of the Greater Manchester family? So 30 seconds max on those. I'll come to Sue first if I can, and perhaps you can also give a final plug for crowdfunding as part of that, Sue.
I'm struggling a bit with my signal. I'm so sorry. It might be better just to go to someone else while I sort my signal out.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Sue. Fine. Sharmina, the balance between hyperlocal and GM in a nutshell.
I think it's a case of, as was said before, that we can be hyper-local in supporting our community and things like that, but it's leading the rest of GM and other places to follow us, because, you know, Salford's the shining bright of the entire world, in my opinion. So it's a case of we show what can be done and we show other places. It's not that we only look inwards, but we help everywhere to look at their own communities and bring them forward together, and we rise as one.
Right, the Salford Way in a nutshell. Sue, do you want to?
Yes, I think if the last year has taught us anything, it's that's the way people think. People think about their own communities, their own families, the people that are nearest and dearest to them. And it's not that we ignore everything outside of that, it's that's our priority. And I know the last year's been tough, and I know it's been tough on Salford, probably tougher than many other parts. But as we move forward, let's not lose that. Let's not lose that focus on our local shops, our local communities, our local community groups, our local volunteering. The rest will come.
Great. Hyperlocal for the general good. Neil.
I think it's like a Russian doll, isn't it? It all needs to fit together in different things at different levels. I would say, though, that the GM level, whilst we've talked a lot about the GM level, it's also been very hyper-local in particular hotspots, hasn't it? So it's not been very Russian doll-like, I think, in all instances, in terms of having that strategic view and helping all areas to be very hyper-local, sort of focus on particular hotspots. So I say we need to have that broad breadth of GM, but also how everything fits in within it, like a Russian doll.
Great. Thanks, Neil. Muna and then Alison, you're down to 10 to 15 seconds each, but go on, Muna.
Yes. So for me, it's about the same standard of good jobs, inclusive jobs, wherever you work, and whether that's a small, medium enterprise or even if it's someone who's volunteering, but also having that same control over the jobs around what they can do. And it's about the supply chains for the big anchors, so the health sector, the housing sector, being able to have a supply chain that is local, that brings in sort of the power of the larger organizations influencing and supporting and enabling the smaller organizations to also grow and develop.
Great, Muna, thank you. And Alison?
Yeah, I just want to pick up, I think it is about the Salford Way, so I think it's about having an influencing strategy in Greater Manchester. It's seeing the principles of subsidiarity. So Greater Manchester is 10+1, it's an 11, and I think we've got some fantastic examples, but we also need to learn from other things that are good in other parts of the system, because that's always important, isn't it? And within communities. Just to say quickly, volunteering has increased in Salford in the last year by 20%. So engaged communities and hyperlocal, the way forward.
Great, Alison, thanks. Paul, hyperlocal, GM, and a closing comment before I wrap us up.
Thanks, Tom. This is a fantastic kind of tension that I do spend quite a bit of time thinking about, to be honest. So I don't think, thinking about Greater Manchester is enough. I think we have to think globally, actually, about what Salford's relationship is with the rest of the world. We live in a global economy, we trade services, we trade goods. We have to think globally and act locally. But our relationship with Greater Manchester is really important. It's important for a number of reasons. We've got a government whose rhetoric talks about devolution and self-determination, but actually in practice what we're seeing at the moment is more centralisation and more determination of what's happening in communities determined by Westminster and Whitehall. A great example of this obviously will be the recent announcements around levelling up funding, which didn't prioritise the city of Salford, despite us being the 18th most deprived local authority in the country, according to the government's own definition of poverty and deprivation. So I think colleagues are right. We have to co-produce, we have to influence, we have to be disruptive as well, in obviously a constructive way. I've been frustrated for many years around the micro competition that I observe within Greater Manchester. That can be destructive. In the grand scheme of things in the global economy, we are quite small as an economic entity here in Greater Manchester. So collaboration around economic industrial activity within Greater Manchester, collaboration around lobbying and influencing national government for proper funding, proper powers, proper investment is absolutely critical. And if Salford can influence the office of the directly elected mayor of Greater Manchester and the soft power that that affords our city region, I think we can achieve great things. But that doesn't mean we should compromise on our integrity and our values and the Salford Way. The Salford Way at the end of the day is what motivates each and every one of us. And we should be taking this to Greater Manchester, to the halls of Westminster and Whitehall, and actually to the rest of the world. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Paul, thanks. And I think that's a great note to wrap up on. And not we should be, we will be. And I think the City Council is ready and up for that challenge, not just to influence and to localise the benefits of these programmes, but to take that really to the world. And I think that is part of our ambition for the medium term here in the city. And I think we've heard some great stuff this morning about that hyper-local, the regional, the national imperatives, the global imperatives around the climate agenda, and much, much more besides. And those very real community benefits of jobs, job creation, and of progression for all our residents and citizens and our towns, whatever their background, whatever their level of need and current level of engagement. So we look forward to being part and parcel of that, I think, as a city and as a movement. And I just want to wrap up with a quick thanks to everybody who's been involved today. We've had, I think, according to the tally, close to 200 people involved in the event. I hope you've all enjoyed it. I'm sorry we haven't had time to do justice to absolutely everything in the Q&A. We've also had a couple of suggestions about doing similar things like this in the future, and I think I can safely say we will certainly be up for that and look forward to coming back with some more details of that. My thanks to everybody on the panel for all the contributions and everything they've said, particularly to Sue for supporting us with the crowdfunder initiative. Please get behind that with us. Get involved with your community groups, get involved with Alison and all her colleagues in the CVS, get involved with your ward councillors as well, pre and post the May elections. That is a community issue, it's a grassroots issue that's here for you, so get behind it and things will happen as a consequence. The last thing I want to say is to pinch a comment from the chat if I can, which is from somebody called Eve, who has commented that this is not a question, but this has been wildly, capitals, wildly inspiring. So proud to be a Salfordian right now. Here's to the future. Thank you. And I couldn't finish on a better note myself, so I'll wrap up there and hope to see you all again soon. Thank you very much.